So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about forgiveness and compassion, and hopefully tie them a little bit and see that, as with all the teachings, they're interrelated. They're not just here, these little separate aspects of life. They're all so interconnected. And how compassion is this very important aspect of spiritual life that is a counterpoint to holding grudges, resentment, and wanting revenge, and that sense of punishment that might come in when we feel we've been badly hurt. And that punishment, this kind of lashing out that can come when it's at its worst. It's like this way that we think by hurting the other person enough, that will help our pain to go away. But it doesn't usually work. It doesn't usually work. All it does is keep the cycle going. It keeps the wheel of suffering turning very, very well indeed, to keep doing that. So forgiveness, it's linked very much with the teachings of Dharma, giving. And we have in our tradition is different aspects of Dharma. One would be the ethics of not taking what's not ours, not harming others, not harming, not stealing, not lying. These ways that we sort of protect our relationship with ourselves and others. In this generosity, it's called. It's this gift of fearlessness that we're giving to others. We're giving them the sense of security in our presence. We're making that commitment that we're making our ecology a joyful one to live. They're often seen as a limit to commit to these things. It's sort of something we have to limit within ourselves, but if we turn it around, you can see it's this beautiful gift, this giving of fearlessness. In America, there's a monastery called Abhayagiri, which many of you probably know, have been around the Dharma for a while. And they chose that name because of it's related to an old monastery from Sri Lanka. And Giri meaning mountain, Abhaya being fearlessness. So fearless mountain is called. And that was all fine, but then when the Thai people, it was a Thai tradition, when they came, they said, "Oh, why did you call it Forgiveness Mountain?" And given that the Thai language is a lot of it is based in Pali, apparently, I thought, oh, well, we better have a look at this and see what's the crossover from here. So that's when they started noticing this relationship between forgiveness and fearlessness, and how those two things were so intricately linked, and how the original Pali had sort of drifted from fearlessness to forgiveness. So such an interesting thing to see. And the original saying about fearlessness comes from the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha said there's 5 gifts, 5 great gifts, the Mahadana, original, long-standing, traditional, ancient, unadulterated from the beginning, middle, the end. They are not open to suspicion and will never be open to suspicion, and are unfaltered by knowledgeable contemplatives and Brahmins. And then he goes through the whole thing. So, it's a very strong foundation for the Dharma. Compassion and forgiveness. Yeah. So we have, oftentimes when we hear dana, for those who've been around for a bit, it's the material gifts that we think of. If you're at a monastery, they'll bring big packages of food, they'll bring all sorts of building materials if they're in that sort of mode. And there's all these sort of gifts compiling into the monastery on the physical side. There's also the money that's in this sort of side of things too. A misadana, this is called. So the physical side of things. But then more importantly, the Buddha put it as more important was this abhaya dana, like as in abhaya giri, abhaya dana. And that is this gift of fearlessness. So it was superior, greater. Very beautiful thing. But then the greatest gift was seen as the gift of dana. This is the greatest act of compassion, was to teach the dana, the Dharma. Dharma, dana was the way that it was given. If you are in a monastery, you'll hear them saying at the start of a talk, would you please bless us? Would you, out of compassion, would you teach the Dharma to us? It originally comes from when the Buddha first awoke, and he was thinking, I'm not going to teach. It's too boring or be vexatious, as one of the translations says. There'll be essentially hard work. I'm not going to do this. So no one will get it. But that's when Brahma Sahampati said, out of compassion for all beings, please come and teach. So that still goes to the present day, that saying. So in a way, you would say Boyd was doing a form of that tonight in introducing it. Not quite the same, but a sort of form of it, right? That invitation to teach. Okay. So this abhaya dana, I'm in a form of that in a practice at the moment, and it's called the 30-day zero negativity challenge. And it is a challenge. There's no doubt about it. On the fridge, there's a calendar. It's got all the squares marked on it. And if during the day, like I'm doing it with someone, if during the day we move over into negativity, we'll put like a little, unhappy face on the calendar. And of course, we managed to get through the day without that. There's a smiley face there. The trouble is with this particular challenge that if you have the grumpy face, you go back to 0 and you start again. So unfortunately for us, tomorrow is day 1 again. A little bit of grumpiness this morning, but it's really quite a joyful practice to do, actually. It brings a lot of presence and a lot of fun into conversations. So that's what I sort of recommend if you feel like giving yourself a real challenge. Could be going for another year or 2 yet. Who knows? But as far as the ethics go, the way we relate to each other, I found it a very rich way of approaching it. A very rich way, because I don't want to be the one responsible for putting it back down to 0 again. So compassion then, just want to tie this up. I know we don't have much time. compassion and bearing grudges, we the practice is to look closely at the grudges we hold, the resentments we hold, the hurts we hold towards each other. This is very eternal practice, this one within the Dharma world. And the simple question is like, how does it feel to carry it around? So maybe if you want to just bring to mind someone who has just maybe annoyed you a little bit or more, depending on how you're feeling. And you can just notice what's there in the body. Is it like tension? Is it grumpiness? Or is it anger? Resentment? And what's it like to have that in the body? Usually there's a bit of tension as well. How does it feel in the heart? And it's probably good to try and do this with as little commentary as possible. You notice that the stories about this person might be kind of vivid and strong. See if it can really come more into the body to sense what is the body like. And then just asking yourself, we're doing this super quickly, but just asking yourself, do I want to carry this around? Is this something I want to carry around? And do I need to carry it around? Do I need to hold this pain, this tightness in the body? And it's like, as you're there, we're not saying this is a should, but even notice then parts of you that may not want to let go. And let's let them be here too. We're not trying to be perfect about it and pretend. Just notice that, you know, there might be a part of us that is not willing to forgive. So let's hold that kindly as well. And perhaps just doing this practice is a little bit more of a step towards freeing the heart. Yeah. Because ultimately this is about an enlightened self-interest in releasing this. So if you want to open the eyes. Because one of the things here is like in forgiving, sometimes we think we're going to condone it, we're going to make it okay, the hurt, and we might have some like physical scars to prove just how hurt we are, or you know, an empty bank account or something like that. And you know, there could be really good reasons for holding a grudge. And so I suggest, if that's the case, that we aim for the longer term here. We aim for a sense of taking the long view. And perhaps even just noting that the times when you're not thinking about that, what is that like? When you're not caught in the grip of the resentment or the grudge, what's that like? Perhaps that might be just a little pointer towards where this practice can head. There's the sense of this freedom of the heart. We're not letting that person do that again. It's really important with boundaries. We're not saying, yep, that's okay. You can tread over me. I'll be a doormat. We're not saying that. But we're releasing what's there. It's important, these forgiveness things, they're not magic. They don't immediately wipe away the pain. It's not like where you go to Varanasi and you jump in the Ganges and supposedly all your negative karma is washed away, which is pretty hard to imagine if you've ever been there and see how filthy that river is. It's not like that. It's not like that. It's a practice. It's a process. So then with forgiveness here, coming back to where we're starting, there's this thing of where we're moving towards this thing of offering the gift of fearlessness. This gift of creating a sanctuary. This place where we're being super clear about our intentions, but we don't want to hurt others. That way we can have a very clear mind and this thing of living without regret. We don't have that regret. So compassion then, as we know it, it's not this, or the Buddhist term, karuna, is a little bit different to compassion in the English language. Again, if you've heard these things, just bearing with it with a beginner's mind, but compassion literally meaning to suffer with someone. And that's not what karuna is. Yeah, it's not the same thing. So compassion, though, really is, in this tradition, it's a great brightness of the heart. It's a brightness of being. If we're suffering, that's not compassion. That's not karuna. Making sense? This is so important. If we're suffering, we're not really getting it right. Yeah? So it's distorted. It's a mistaken kind of compassion. I remember Sokni Rinpoche would say, that's dumb compassion. Dumb compassion is when we're suffering with it. Yeah. And there's another word for compassion in Pali, in the Dharma, it's called anukampa. And that's the one I was saying before, that please out of compassion, offer. Please offer something, anukampa. But what that really means is to resonate with, or to be concerned for the well-being of others, anukampa. It doesn't get used as much as karuna, but it's very much there in the teaching and the chants. If you go to the monastery, it'll be there as well. Okay. So I think it's really important to reflect on compassion in this way, karuna. This is where the heart can be freed. If we're fearful of going into the hole with someone, then it's sort of like we might want to pull back and just reflect on what's the approach that I'm taking here. Am I sort of letting myself be pulled down into a vortex of grief? Which, many counselors and psychologists talk about this in the early days when they get started. They just get drained and worn out, or many environmentalists. That's what happens. So it's that sort of wrong sort of compassion. Yeah. So, and it's, it's super important to reflect on it in this way. It is a giving out of the heart, but it's not at the expense of our heart. That brightness of being that's flowing out into the world. Touching all beings equally and everywhere. It's a classical line. Many things. So a couple of points to develop genuine compassion. First of all, it needs to be free from anxiety. Very important. Needs to be free from worry. It's a concern for others that's not worried. this loving concern. It's caring, but it's not agitated. And it's a love here in a way that's not personal as well. I'm going to say that's not particularly easy, but this is the teaching. This thing of like wishing them well and doing what you can, but knowing that there is, you know, a limit to how much we can help some people. They have their own karma to work out as well. But that doesn't mean that we don't try our best. I think there's actually a poem from Mary Oliver I read out last week, which is about this, where it was, she was talking about witnessing a forest being burnt near her home, a forest that she walked in a lot. And she said about that essentially, you know, this is the challenge of life, to love in a way that is totally, how would you say, totally committed. And yet when the time comes, to let it go. To let it go. And this is like what caring like this is like. We don't hold back. And yet, at some other point, we might just have to release. So as far as like self-forgiveness goes, and self-compassion, self-forgiveness, because the great challenge certainly has been for me, I think many people are like this, is that when it comes down to it, everyone else can be forgiven except for me. You know, my sins are worse than everyone else's, and I'm so stupid, there's just no way that I should be forgiven, whatever line it is. This, like, we all have some form of this, and the little exercise we can do, this comes like I don't know if it comes from any particular tradition, but I know I got this from Ajahn Amaro from Amaravati in England. So how about we do, just to finish up, a little self-compassion exercise, and let's see how we go. This is James Baraz special, this one too. So what I'm going to do, I want you to start by thinking of your own name here. And then repeating the usual criticisms that you give to yourself. I'm Anton, and I consider myself to be a horrible person. I'm so horrible and terrible and bad that there's just no chance it'll ever get better. Letting those criticisms be here, and you'll know them. I'm useless, I'm hopeless. And just pause that for a second. And now, just go ahead and imagine stepping out from your own life, and that instead you're beside yourself and you're your own best friend. Just beside you there, looking at this person criticizing themselves. And so we go then like, so my friend Anton then comes to me and says, wow, you know, I hear you saying that, but I'm not inclined to agree. And in the same way that if a friend of yours was saying that to themselves, what would be your immediate reaction? I was saying, oh, I'm such a hopeless person, can't get anything right. what would be Emily's first response? Boyd's, Helen. I know a few of you. I've got a pretty good idea. I don't think there'll be any hesitation whatsoever. The heart moves to compassion, forgiveness. Hey, you're not so bad. You kind of talk like you're a terrible criminal, but that's just not true. You're a good-hearted person. How about we sit down and have a cup of tea? Be kind of saying, don't be so hard on yourself. I like you. So when you're ready, just opening the eyes and so these few thoughts are for your hopefully for your benefit, for your consideration. Whatever's helpful, just take that. And whatever's not, just leave it behind. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. And, pleasure to see you. See beautiful faces, and see you again soon. Thanks, Thanks, Boyd. Thanks, Liz.